Today I want to talk a little bit about the Carolina rig, when to use it, how to tie it, how to rig it. It's one of my favorite baits to throw. It works year round, and it's definitely something you need to have in your arsenal. Alright, so what you're going to need for your Carolina rig, I use this particular hook's a Berkley Fusion. This one's a 3/0. You can go up to a 4/0 if you want to use larger. You can go down to a 2/0 if you want to use smaller. This is the first time I've ever used the Berkley Fusions, and I've been pretty happy with them. A lot of people say the Gamakatsus are a whole lot sharper, and then you've got the Trokars, but I was just going to try these out, and so far I've been pretty happy with them. You're going to have a 5/16. This particular one's a lead weight. You can use tungsten. That's all about preference there. A lot of times I just use lead. You got a barreled swivel. This particular one is gold. You can get them in different colors, black, silver, and then a bead. And the bead is somewhat optional. I always use one. This particular one's like a peach. It's in between a peach and a pink color, and I find that I get the best results with it. But again, that's going to be personal preference. Some people use a tungsten bead, and then it gives you some sound when it's dragging on the bottom of your weight hitting that tungsten bead. Alright, so from there you're going to take your line. You're going to slide your weight onto the line, followed by your bead. You can put a bobber stopper over top. I don't use one. Some people do, some people don't. I understand why some people do, but just in my case, I don't. Alright, and then you're going to take, I use a uni knot. You can use a Palomar. I use a Palomar when I tie my actual hook on, but when I'm tying to the swivel, I use a uni. It's just, again, personal preference. It's not saying that that's right or wrong. And if you're not familiar with either of these knots, you can look them up on YouTube. You know, there'll be several tutorials pop up of showing you how to tie them. Once you get that knot tied, I like to wet it a little, whether it be with spit or with water. Make sure you snug it up good. Cut our tag end off. So this is what you should have here. This coming from your rod tip down. You should have your weight, and again, you can go up to a 1/4 ounce, or you can go down either one to a 3/16, whatever suits you. A lot of times if I'm farm pond fishing, I'll go down to a 3/16 because I don't need quite as much weight or need to be cast as far. But if I'm on a lake or I'm fishing deeper water, a lot of times I'll switch to a 1/4 ounce weight here. That way it just gets me down on the bottom a little faster. I can feel a little more as I'm pulling it across the bottom, but it also allows me to cast a little farther is the main reason. Then you've got your bead. Like I said, I use the little glass beads. This one's like a in between a peach and a pink color. I find that one works best for me. You can use any color. You can use a tungsten bead, and that gives you a little more action when you're dragging on the bottom and this weight's hitting your bead, sound wise. Then you're tied off to your barrel swivel. I like to use gold. You can use black. There's other colors out there. So from here, and again, I use a uni knot to tie my main line to the swivel. You can use Palomar, you can use whatever you like there. I just find that the uni knot works best when I'm connecting it to the swivel. So from there, you need to make you a leader. The leader's gonna vary. I'm using 17-pound Berkley Tri-Line. I find it works pretty good. Depending upon where I'm fishing, I'll use braid. When I'm fishing lakes, deeper water, where there's going to be rocks or structures, I put on 20-pound braid, just because you're going to get hung up some, and to keep from breaking off all the time and losing hooks and losing baits. I like to have that strong braid where I can rip through structure if I need to get broke loose. Plus, if you hook up with a pretty good sized fish, it's always nice to have a little bit stronger line, and I'm not as concerned with the fish seeing it. I have also ran braid on my reel and then use this 17-pound Tri-Line for my leader material. If you got really clear water, I find that works better, because actually what's connected to the bait is going to be a little harder for them to see, with it being the monofilament. Plus you get a little more stretch, and bait moves around a little better, but you've still got that strength of the braid. So again, I'm going to use a uni knot to tie off here to the other end of my swivel. Again, you can find how-to videos on here, tons of them, of how to tie these knots. Find what works best for you. I don't think there's a right or a wrong there. You can argue till you're blue in the face about knots when it comes to fishing. I like to wet my knot down, make sure it's good and tight, pull it tight. And again, with the uni knot, the harder you pull, the tighter it gets. So that's one of the reasons I like to use it on my swivel, because it's going to be the part where it's pulling the hardest. Cut my tag end off. Alright, so now I've got both my ends tied off to my swivel. So now we're going to connect to our hook, and again, I generally use a Palomar knot here. Alright, so once we're tied off to our hook, we're going to cut our tag end off there. Now we're ready to put some type of bait on. Alright, so when I'm throwing a Carolina rig, there's two main baits that I'm going to be using in particular. One is tried and true. I use it majority of the time, and that is a green pumpkin lizard. I normally use Zoom. I'm not really a brand specific kind of guy, but I normally use Zoom. Green pumpkin, you can switch it up. You can use some green pumpkin with some red flakes. You can go over to a watermelon seed. Anything natural colored I like. Again, that's all going to be personal preference there. Different parts of the country, different lakes, different ponds are going to respond better and worse to different kind of baits. And then the second one is the Sweet Beaver by Reaction Innovations. Here's what the pack looks like for them. I really like these. It's like a little creature bait. It's very good if you're imitating crawfish. If you can see on the tail here, the tail is connected in the middle and on the end. You can throw it just how it comes out of the pack, or sometimes what I'll do is I'll take right here in the middle and I'll break this loose and break this loose at the end, and then that just gives you a little more action when you're dragging across the bottom. These two legs want to move back and forth a little bit, and I found that gives you a little more action as you're coming through the water. So how you're going to rig this up, we'll start with the Sweet Beaver. You're on the tip of the hook, right down the middle of the bait. Run it up to where the curve starts. You want to make sure you're coming out. These Sweet Beavers have a groove right in the middle. You're going to make sure you're coming out right there. You're going to turn it, get up on top of the hook. And then again, they've got a little groove in the middle where your hook's going to come back in too. And that's one of the things I really like about these Sweet Beavers from Reaction Innovations. And now you're hooked up. And this is a pretty weedless setup. Again, with this little groove in the Sweet Beavers, even though your hook's exposed, it's actually tucked down in that crease, and I find that it makes for a pretty weedless setup. If I'm dragging through grass or some heavy brush, I don't get hung up very often when I'm throwing the Sweet Beaver. And that's the first one. And again, I probably use this one a little less than the Lizard, but that's not to say this is not just as useful, because this bait does work well with a Carolina rig. Alright, and the most common bait I'm going to use with this is a Lizard. I'm going to rig it up pretty much the same way. Run it right down the center of the Lizard's head. When it gets to the turn, I'm going to come out as close to the center as I possibly can. I'm going to run it on up the hook, turn it. This is just like you're rigging it up for a Texas rig or shaky head. I'm going to check and see where the hook's going to come out, mark it with my finger, go right through the center. And again, the Sweet Beaver is going to offer for just a little more of a weedless presentation, just because of the little groove that the hook point's going to set in. And then on the Lizard, get straightened back up here. Then on the Lizard, what you can do is tuck it back into the body, and that will give you a little more weedless presentation there. And that's what you're going to have with the Lizard set up. And again, this is what I most oftentimes run, is a green pumpkin Lizard that just has the black flakes. There's nothing special to it. It's been around for a long time, and that's because it works. Alright, so now that you've got your Carolina rig tied off and set up, now we're going to talk about a little bit about how you fish it. Farm ponds, lakes alike, you're going to fish them pretty much the same way. At lakes, what I like to do is troll around points, up into some coves if I can find some rocks in the water. And this is just a really good bait year-round, because fish will bite it year-round. Wintertime even, I've had some success out of it. And what you're going to be doing here is, it really can tell you a lot about the lake. So the leader I've got here is about 12 or 13 inches. So when you cast out, you're going to be dragging this weight and this bead on the bottom. And you're going to be able to feel everything on the bottom, whether it's sand, whether you're bouncing on rocks, whether you're hitting brush piles. And once you get used to fishing it a little bit, you'll be able to tell a whole lot more about what I'm talking about. But you can feel pretty much everything on the bottom. And as you drag it across there, it's gonna knock up dust as this weight and this bead knocks together and makes a little noise. And as that weight hits the bottom, or hits the rocks, or hits the brush piles, it's going to throw up a little dust, going to throw up a little dirt, a little sand, and that's going to draw their attention. And then your bait's going to be, 12, 13. I have thrown a leader all the way up to about 3 foot long. I just try to stay around a foot, foot and a half. I feel that works best for me. Again, play around and see what works best for you there. But then, as your bait comes through, again, this is one of the reasons why I like to use a monofilament or a fluorocarbon leader instead of the braid, because they're less likely to see this part of the line. But so you're dragging this across the bottom, and again, you're just barely pulling, and you'll be able to feel everything. It's a very finesse bait. That's why it's good for big fish. A lot of times those big fish are laying on the bottom and they don't want to really get up and move around a lot to get a meal. So really this is just a good finesse bait. You've got all the legs on the lizard, you've got the tail, you've got a lot of action here, showing some movement, attracting them. And it's really just going to sit there, and you'll feel it. It'll feel like they pick it up in their mouth sometimes, and they'll just bump, bump. Always reel down and start pulling back real slow, and you'll feel it again, just bump, bump. They'll put it all the way in their mouth. Normally on a hook set, I jerk to the side. Not super hard, but you want to do enough to, especially if you tuck that hook back in, to break it out of the lizard, and make sure you get a good hook up there and break it out, which it doesn't take a whole lot, but it does take some. So I hope you've learned something today. I hope this adds another tool in your toolbox and your tackle box. Again, the Carolina rig, it's been around for a long time, and there's a reason for that. It's still catching fish today.